Tonight, are families being let down over the staggering cost of childcare? There are calls for the Scottish Government to match the provision in England to help ease pressure on parents.
Over the next 12 months, we're anticipating spending over £21,000 for the whole year on nursery fees, and that's about £1,800 a month, which is just crazy prices.
Also making the headlines, escalating tensions over the housing of asylum seekers. A brick thrown through the window of an asylum hotel in Falkirk has been condemned as unacceptable intimidation. The First Minister says there's real hope for a better deal on whisky tariffs after his meeting with President Trump.
And I'll be speaking to folk in the whisky industry to see if they share the First Minister's confidence.
In sport, we count down to the return of the Premiership, with Hearts looking to pile the pressure on Rangers. I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Parents have told STV News they feel let down by the Scottish Government because of staggering childcare costs. Campaigners demonstrated outside the Scottish Parliament today, calling for ministers to make a life-changing difference by providing extended funded hours, bringing Scotland in line with England. The Scottish Government has said it is open to discussions. Well, let's take a look at the current provision in Scotland. All 3 to 5 year olds in Scotland receive 30 hours a week funding. Some 2-year-olds qualify, but only in low-income households. The situation in England is a little different. Funding for working parents now starts from when the child is 9 months, up until school age. All 3 to 5 year olds in England are entitled to 15 hours of free childcare per week, with an additional 15 hours available for working families. And, as in Scotland, some 2-year-olds qualify. The campaign group Pregnant Then Screwed is proposing 3 changes to the system in Scotland. They want to see childcare costs capped at 5% of a family's income, with the rest covered by public funds. They're proposing 15 hours of funding should be introduced for children aged 9 months to 2 years. And they want to see funding extended to 22 hours a week for 2-year-olds. Parents say they're frustrated by the lack of progress on this in Scotland. Vanessa Kennedy has been speaking to 2 mothers who said they're struggling to meet the rising costs.
Bernie moved from Birmingham to Edinburgh 3 years ago to be closer to her husband's family. In order to go back to work for 4 days a week, her overall costs of childcare for her 2 children amount to £1,800 every month. But if she'd stayed in England, she says she'd be saving thousands of pounds a year because of the difference in supports.
Over the next 12 months, we're anticipating spending over £21,000 for the whole year on nursery fees. It's so frustrating looking down at England and the funding that they're getting. If Leo was born in England, or if we lived in England right now, he would be starting nursery with funded hours. Since my eldest started nursery, our nursery fees have gone up 33%. And I can confirm my wage has definitely not gone up 33%.
Bernie is amongst the campaigners who came to voice their frustration at what they say are crippling costs of childcare. Ruth had to discuss childcare options with her son's grandparents before he was even born. She says putting Ivan into nursery for 2 days a week means they're unable to save for the future.
I feel really let down, and I don't understand what's happening. I get no support until they're 3 years old, which is this huge cliff edge for families just to make up, and it doesn't really make sense when the government wants us to be growing our economy and helping mums and dads back into work.
She and Bernie are part of a campaign to overhaul the current childcare system in Scotland. They're proposing that funded childcare should be made available from 9 months rather than the current age of 3. And they say that the costs of care should be capped.
A family with 2 parents or 1, they would pay no more than 5% of their income. So we know that would help middle and low income families the most, potentially saving parents thousands of pounds a year because what they pay for childcare would be capped. Many households need 2 incomes, so they have to work, but the childcare is pricing, and it is women here out of the labour market.
Childcare is very complex. There, as I say, families have a number of different requirements for their child childcare. So we are working directly with families to understand what it is they need in an effort to work towards building that bigger system.
The Minister for Children and Young People says she is open to hearing more about these campaigners' proposals. With a general election coming up next year, it's something that people here say should be a top priority. Vanessa Kennedy, STV News Edinburgh.
A brick has been thrown through the window of a hotel housing asylum seekers in Falkirk. The Cladden Hotel has been the focus of protests in recent weeks, with pro- and anti-immigration groups clashing on its doorstep. The First Minister, John Swinney, described the attack as absolutely despicable, and one anti-racism group has condemned it as unacceptable intimidation. Well, our reporter Vanessa Taft joins us now. And Vanessa, what else do you know about this incident?
Well, this incident happened in the early hours yesterday morning. Now, it was an isolated attack, but a brick was thrown through the ground floor window of this hotel, which is housing people who are waiting to learn whether they've been granted asylum. Now, this hotel here in Falkirk behind me is the epicentre of what's become a toxic and very heated debate about immigration in Scotland. Now, there have been multiple protests within the last few months outside this hotel. Many have been from anti-immigration groups and people who are angry that people are living here as well. Now, Police Scotland say they're investigating the incident and their inquiries are ongoing. But the First Minister, John Swinney, has said this attack is despicable, and he said that what's happened here has made him feel appalled that people would be treated like this in Scotland. Now, that's a sentiment that's also been echoed by campaign groups locally here as well.
Generally, this is a very inclusive place with lots of different community groups, faith groups, groups for marginalised communities that all come together and show that this is an inclusive and diverse place. Anti-immigration sentiment isn't new, but the scale of it and the latest demonstrations certainly are, and I don't think it represents Falkirk at all.
So today, Vanessa, there's been increased political attention to this issue.
Yes, well, it's been a hot political topic, and not just since the protests that we've seen here in Falkirk, but since both Holyrood and Westminster governments have gone back after the political recess. Now, just within the last few hours, MSPs at the Scottish Parliament have been debating the cost of housing asylum seekers, and that all comes after Glasgow City Council said that for them, it's not financially sustainable.
It is unfair and wrong that we are still spending millions of pounds every day providing hotels to asylum seekers and illegal immigrants.
You need to conclude.
The communities I understand want action. The communities I speak with, want action from their governments. They understand that Britain should be a place to live, to work, to flourish, to put down roots, but not a hotel for those who have entered the country illegally.
Scotland has a long history of being a welcoming nation where refugees have been able to rebuild their lives. Successive generations of refugee communities have contributed to Scotland, to our economy and our society. We shouldn't now turn our backs on those who need our protection in response to those who do seek to cause division and fuel tensions.
The Falkirk Council say they don't have anything to do with asylum seekers being housed here. They say that responsibility lies with the Home Office. Now, the Home Office are saying that they have a zero-tolerance approach for violence. But honestly, this isn't an issue that's dying down anytime soon, as there are further protests planned here next weekend.
Vanessa in Falkirk, thank you. The First Minister says there's a chance of a better deal on US tariffs for Scotch whisky after his meeting with President Trump in the White House last night. John Swinney says the President could see the benefit of a deal to the US bourbon industry and to Scotland. Our political editor Colin Mackay has been speaking to the First Minister and is at a whisky industry gathering in Edinburgh. Colin, what else was the First Minister saying?
Well, John Swinney is just back from that last-minute trip to Washington. He called us all to Bute House for a press conference to tell us how it had gone. And the short answer is better than he had hoped it could. 10% tariffs are costing the industry £4 million a week. John Swinney says this was not even on the radar for UK-US trade negotiations before President Trump's visit to Scotland in the summer. Now, I asked the President at Turnberry and he said that he didn't know this was a problem at the time. Well, he knows now, and the First Minister says he gets it. He told President Trump that zero tariffs on whisky would not only help Scotland, but also help the Kentucky bourbon industry, which exports about $300 million worth of barrels to Scotland every year, although Scotch whisky exports to the US are worth about 4 times that.
There's a win-win situation to be obtained here. So it's not just a one-way street for Scotland that's got benefits for the United States too. That's why I think it's a really attractive proposition. And I think in the light of that, I think there is every possibility a deal can be made. What I've done is I've got much greater focus and priority attached to this. I don't think this was anywhere on the cards prior to President Trump's visit in the summer, but I've now got it on the agenda, and I leave it very much to the United Kingdom government, who have the constitutional responsibility to negotiate this deal. And I want to make sure every effort is put in to make sure that's the case, and I've got confidence.
John Swinney's not part of that negotiating team, though. That's down to the US and the UK governments. The First Minister thinks, though, that he has moved things forward. He says there is every probability of a deal, but there's still absolutely no guarantee. And he says the ball is now firmly in the UK government's court. Well, I'm at the Scotch Whisky Association Spirit of Scotland reception. I'm surrounded by folk from all elements of the industry, and among them is Simon Erlanger, the Chief Executive of the Isle of Harris Distillers. Now, Simon, you were in Washington with the First Minister. Is it as positive as he's suggesting?
Yeah, well, I was really lucky, very fortunate to be able to represent the industry and support the First Minister in his visit to Washington. We've just spent 2 days talking to our counterparts in the American whiskey industry, barrel making industry.
And was it as positive as the First Minister suggests?
I think it was very, very positive. I think the arguments that were put over that a zero tariff deal could be good for Scotland, but also good for America, really resonated. So I think it went down very well.
How much is it costing the industry at the moment? Is it costing jobs, for example?
The industry is having a difficult time at the moment. Right across the industry, we're being buffeted by numerous headwinds, including tariffs. And that's resulting in job losses, and it's also resulting in the distilleries making less spirit, like we are at the Isle of Harris distillery. And the interesting point, of course, for this meeting is that if the industry makes less whiskey, they buy less barrels from Kentucky. And therefore that affects the American economy as well and American jobs.
So it's win-win, that's what the First Minister is saying.
That's
Simon,
the idea.
Thanks for joining us on STV News. Now, there is a week before President Trump comes to the UK for that state visit. That's when we'll find out if this last-minute pitch to the President has paid off.
Colin, thank you. The Prime Minister continues to face the fallout from last week's resignation of his deputy Angela Rayner, triggering a reshuffle and the demotion of the Scottish Secretary Ian Murray. As well as drama within the Labour Party, at Prime Minister's questions, Keir Starmer was also feeling the pressure over controversies abroad. Our Westminster correspondent Paris Koutsayanis joins us. Paris, how did he respond?
Yeah, John, it was a tough outing for the Prime Minister today. He faces problems in Washington, in the Middle East, and in his own party. At PMQs, he was forced to defend his ambassador to the United States, Peter Mandelson, who, by the way, was in that Oval Office meeting with John Swinney and Donald Trump that Colin was just talking about. Peter Mandelson is facing questions over his friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, which he now admits was a mistake. Keir Starmer was also challenged by the SNP over a meeting today in Downing Street with the Israeli president, a visit that's attracted criticism from some quarters over Israel's conduct in Gaza.
The Prime Minister will today welcome into his home the man who called for the collective punishment of the Palestinian people and who signed the artillery shells that destroyed their homes, their families and their friends. A man who will ignore every word the Prime Minister says. Would he invite Vladimir Putin into number 10? What does it say of this Prime Minister that he will harbour this man whilst children starve?
We all want an outcome that ensures peace, that the hostages get out, that aid gets in, and there's a two-state outcome. It is the only way we will get peace in a region that has suffered conflict for a very, very long time. I will not give up on diplomacy. That is the politics of students.
In Paris, as well as crises abroad, the Prime Minister is still facing questions closer to home about last week's dramatic reshuffle.
That's right. He was challenged by the Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch about why he didn't sack Angela Rayner rather than wait for her to resign over paying too little tax. And there have been questions too today for the Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar over whether he played a role in the sacking of Ian Murray from the cabinet in the reshuffle that followed. Speaking on camera for the first time since that reshuffle, the Scottish Labour leader tried to play down reports that he may have been involved.
Ultimately, it's a decision for the Prime Minister who sits around his cabinet table. I had and continue to have a good working relationship and personal relationship with Ian Murray, just like I do with Douglas Alexander. They're both still in government, and both, I'm sure, will do a great job to make sure they're delivering for Scotland.
Did you have any part to play in the sacking? Were you consulted by the Prime Minister?
Look, I'm not going to get into private conversations I had with the Prime Minister, but ultimately it is his decision who he chooses to sit around his cabinet table. Ian was doing a good job. I've got no doubt that Douglas will continue that hard work, and both are still in government, making sure they're delivering for Scotland.
Now, Angela Rayner's resignation has also triggered an election to be the new deputy leader of the Labour Party. 6 MPs are furiously campaigning to get 80 nominations from their colleagues here at Westminster by 5 p.m. tomorrow in order to make it onto the ballot. Bridget Phillipson, who's the Education Secretary, she's in the lead for those nominations, and she's clearly the Prime Minister's choice for the job. Lucy Powell, who's second, she was sacked by Keir Starmer less than a week ago. If she or any of the other candidates make it onto the ballot, it could be a really awkward contest. It would give them the platform to fight the government over cuts to spending and welfare. And whoever wins, the Prime Minister will have to work with them because they'll be elected by the Labour membership.
Paris at Westminster, thank you. A man has been arrested following the death of a man in South Lanarkshire last month. Scott Boyd was found dead in the early hours of the 27th of August in the Braeside Crescent in Kirkmuir Hill. 35-year-old Sean McIntyre entered no plea when he appeared at Airdrie Sheriff Court. A gang of 4 men have been jailed for a total of 81 years for killing a man in his car. 30-year-old Tony Ferns was stabbed in the heart moments after he had dropped his girlfriend at her home in Thornley Bank in April 2019. Craig Cahoon, Joseph McCulloch, Raymond Platt and Robert Park were convicted of his murder at the High Court in Glasgow. The award that no one wants to win is back this year after a decade-long hiatus, and it's already causing controversy. The Carbuncle Awards name and shame towns scarred by unsightly architecture. This year, the dubious honour has gone to Port Glasgow. Vidishi Tiwari has more.
You're not willing to accept the award at this moment, so unfortunately we've got someone else over here who might be able to take the award for us. Ta-da!
An award that nobody wants to accept, the Pluke on a Plinth, historically given to Scotland's most architecturally dismal town. This year, that unfortunate honour has gone to Port Glasgow. Now, judges said that the money being invested in Port Glasgow had led to a town that's turned its back on the waterfront, instead dominated by a retail park and a dual carriageway that it says dulls the senses while sucking the life out of the town centre. Now, is that a fair assessment? I spoke to some people that live here to find out more.
I agree with that.
What do you think needs to change?
The council. The council's going to have to spend more money.
Do you think it's fair to call it dismal, though? Is it that bad?
I don't think it's that bad, but it's not very good, put it that way. I was for Paisley and I want to marry down here. I hated it when I come down, but I love it now.
Port Glasgow's an affluent town, full of friendly people, and we've got a bright future.
Quite a mixed reaction from locals on the high street. But what about those doing their best to regenerate the town?
It's okay to sit and say the most dismal town in Scotland. I don't even know what that means. Can I go to a community and say you're not trying hard enough? The community doesn't need to hear it's poor, that it's dismal, that it's rubbish. Right? The community needs to hear that it's got opportunities.
Why didn't you come and talk to us, and we could point out all the things that's happening here in Port Glasgow, all the good things that's happened. For to come in and criticise and to say it's to spur you on, I don't accept that argument. Not one bit do I accept that argument. Port Glasgow is 250 years old, and it'll be here for another 250 years. Carbuncle will not be.
The man responsible for the uproar says the prize isn't a vehicle for mockery, instead a chance for locals to show up for their town.
although we're approaching improvements from different angles, our destination is the same. We want to see a better Port Glasgow. It's a strong passion for the town, a sense of civic pride and pride in your home, and that's fantastic.
This year's Pluke on a Plinth may have gone in the bin, but there's always the next one. Vidushi Thavari, STV News, Port Glasgow.
Ronnie's here with the sport. What do you got for us?
Hunnels, John. Always got Hunnels as sport.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Good evening. We start with some breaking news in the last hour, and Rangers fans face a potential ban for a future European away match after the club were hit with a fresh UEFA sanction over fan behaviour. The club have been fined €20,000 after supporters lit flares in their recent Champions League match in Bruges. If a similar offence occurs in the next 2 years, fans will be banned from a future away match. Well, staying with football, and with the international window over, it's back to domestic matters. And what a weekend we have in store. None more so than this fixture. Rangers welcoming Hearts to Ibrox on Saturday. Russell Martin will be hoping the break will help his side in their quest for their first league win of the season. Meanwhile, Derek McInnes has won Manager of the Month for August, with his side sitting joint top of the Scottish Premiership. Captain Lawrence Shankland says confidence has never been higher and they can go to Ibrox and win.
First and foremost, we want to go there and win, and that's what we'll try to do on the day. But obviously, you'll go with your game plan, try and make things happen the way we want them to go in the game, and go and enjoy it. Enjoy that bit of pressure on you that people are expecting you to go there and get a result. You need to enjoy that and thrive in that. And I think where we are, positivity-wise, and the way we've started the season, we can go there and enjoy it.
Well, one player who will be returning from international duty full of confidence is this man, Tello Asgard. After the Norwegian midfielder, get this, scored 4 goals in the final half an hour of their match against Moldova. Asgard came on with his side leading 6-0 in their World Cup qualifier. He scored a hat-trick in just 13 minutes before adding a 4th in stoppage time to make the final score Norway 11, Moldova 1. Don't fancy Moldova's chances of making it to the World Cup. Finally tonight, this weekend, we'll see sibling rivalry like no other as Livingston travel to Aberdeen with not one but 2 sets of brothers going head to head. The Shinnie and Yenge brothers will battle it out for the ultimate family bragging rights, with Livy boss David Martindale expecting an added spice to the occasion, as Jamie Bothwick can explain.
He was one of the busiest managers in the transfer market this summer, as David Martindale brought in more than a dozen new players, including 2 loans from the English Premier League on deadline day. And while he now has the deepest squad to work with of his time at Livingston, that backing from the board comes with extra responsibility.
We're kind of training with 22 outfield players most days, and you don't expect a drop-off when you change the kind of teams or whatever groups they're training within. You don't expect a drop-off, so that shows you kind of where the squad depth is. We're expecting to go to Aberdeen, we want to get 3 points, we want to win that game of football, so there's going to be that expectation from within the group, from me, from my ownership. I've now got the pressures from above, which I maybe never had in previous years.
Saturday could present the unusual sight of 2 sibling rivalries on the field. Livy's Andrew Shinnie against brother Graham, plus Tete Yenge in yellow and black, across from Kusini Yenge in red.
Just adds a wee bit of spice to the game, probably adds a wee bit of banter with the Yengies and the Shinnies. The mum and dads, especially Shins, his mum and dad, I think they try and get to a lot of the games, and sometimes it's maybe Andrew or Graham. So they've not got a decision to make this week. They're going to go along to the game. Tetty's a little bit different with his parent in Australia. So it brings a different dynamic for probably a bit of banter for the households.
Jamie Borthwick, STV Sport.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
the Shinny and Yengi dinner table on Saturday night could be a wee bit awkward, John. That's all your sport tonight.
Shinny and Yengi. Great, thanks, Rory. Let's go to the weather with Philip. What's all this talk I'm hearing about a storm this weekend?
Yes, there is a lot of talk about a storm this weekend, John. My plan tonight was to actually try and either debunk the current news about the news stories about an approaching storm or confirm them. And at the moment, I can do neither because there is still a lot of uncertainty. The system that the Met Office are keeping an eye on is this area of low pressure currently out in the Atlantic. Many news outlets are already calling it Storm Amy, but to clarify, it has not been named by the Met Office, who have said there is a 10% chance of it being named. What I can tell you is that yes, we will see a deep area of low pressure affecting Scotland at the end of the weekend that will bring with it some wet and windy conditions. So we'll likely see some warnings issued over the next couple of days, but at the moment, there's still uncertainty about its exact track. Let's take a look at the forecast.
A clear start makes way for a day of ancient discoveries. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Well, as we head through the rest of this evening and overnight, this frontal system is continuing to slowly move north and northeastwards, bringing with it this band of quite heavy and persistent rain. So at the moment, it is a wet rush hour through many central, southern and eastern parts. Once that clears away to the northeast by around midnight, we'll start to see some frequent blustery showers feeding in from the west, and the winds are continuing to strengthen. We'll be seeing some severe coastal gales in the very far west. So with the strength of the winds and the cloud cover, it does mean it will be a fairly mild night to come. Temperatures in most towns and cities staying in double figures. Looking ahead to tomorrow, as you can see, some brightness around first thing through many central, southern and eastern parts. As we head into the afternoon, however, these blustery showers that are feeding in from the west become fairly widespread. And also, as you can see, some highlighted areas on the map. That means that there will be quite heavy at times, could contain some hail, and we could see some thunder as well. Temperature-wise, reaching highs of 14 or 15 degrees Celsius, so it is feeling cooler out and about. Then looking ahead to Friday, an unsettled, changeable day to end the working week. Again, we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered blustery showers. Gradually, the winds will be easing. The heaviest and most frequent showers will be in the west, with highs of 16 or 17. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
So yes, John, no storm quite yet, but you know, famous last words.
I remember the last time a guy did that. It was about 40 years ago, probably before you were born, and it's still not been forgotten. So good luck with that one,
yes,
Philip.
I know, I hope, yeah.
It's recorded. Cheers, Philip, thanks. That's all from us. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.